short history of the victory of Adwa. By the late 19th century, the scramble for Africa was in full swing. At the Berlin Conference, European powers sat around a table and carved up an entire continent without a single African present. But one ancient empire in the Horn of Africa stood in their way: Ethiopia. In 1889, Menelik II ascended to the throne. To secure his borders and modernize his nation, he signed the Treaty of Wuchale with Italy. On the surface, it was a friendship pact, but hidden in the ink was a deadly deception. Article 17 was a linguistic trap. The Amharic version said Ethiopia could use Italy as an intermediary for foreign relations. The Italian version said Ethiopia must. When Menelik discovered the ruse, that Italy was trying to claim Ethiopia as a protectorate, he didn't just send a letter, he sent a message. Backed by the fierce Empress Taytu Betul, he denounced the treaty in 1893. The Empress famously told the Italians,
"I am a woman. I do not like war. However, I would rather die than accepting your deal."
War was now inevitable, but Italy made a fatal mistake. They assumed Ethiopia was a fractured land of tribes. Instead, Menelik issued a nationwide mobilization decree. From the south, the north, the east, and the west, over 100,000 soldiers answered the call. They weren't just professional soldiers, they were farmers, priests, and merchants. Most importantly, they were led by brilliant generals like Ras Alula, Ras Makonnen, and the Empress herself. To defeat a modern European army, Menelik needed more than just numbers. He needed a brain trust of the finest military minds in Africa. Ras Alula Engida, the great tactician. Known as the Garibaldi of Abyssinia, Alula was a master of intelligence. He utilized a vast network of spies, peasant farmers and double agents who fed the Italians false information about Ethiopian troop strength and locations. Ras Makonnen Volda Mikael, a brilliant diplomat and general, he understood European weaponry. He ensured the army was equipped with nearly 100,000 modern Remington and Gras rifles, largely purchased from Russia and France. Vitorari Habte Georgis, the Chu Bear, or commander of the vanguard. His role was to lead the initial shock troops and manage the complex logistics of feeding an army of over 100,000 in the field. The Italian commander, General Oreste Baratieri, was overconfident. He led a force of nearly 20,000 well-armed troops, including elite Italian units and Askari, Eritrean colonial troops. But they were in unfamiliar, rugged terrain, and their maps were notoriously inaccurate. Before the main event, the Ethiopians showed their strategic brilliance at the Siege of Mekelle. It was Empress Taytu who devised the plan to cut off the Italian water supply, forcing a surrender without a massive bloodbath. It was a psychological blow the Italians never recovered from. The Ethiopian strategy was one of strategic retreat and scorched earth. They lured General Baratieri's Italian forces deep into the rugged mountains of Tigray, far from their supply lines, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. March 1st, 1896. Sunday morning. The Italian forces, goaded by a telegram from Rome calling Baratieri cowardly, decided to launch a surprise night attack. The Italians attempted a surprise night march. However, Ras Alula's scouts spotted them immediately. By dawn, the Italians were trapped in a geographical nightmare. It was a disaster from the start. In the dark, the three Italian columns lost contact with each other. By dawn, they were isolated in the jagged peaks of Adwa. The Ethiopians were ready. They had spent years stockpiling modern rifles from France and Russia. When the first Italian column emerged, they were met by a wall of 100,000 warriors. Empress Taytu was on the front lines, leading her own battalion of 5,000 soldiers and encouraging the men to hold their ground. The sheer numerical and moral superiority of the Ethiopian forces began to crush the Italian lines. The Ethiopian generals employed a multi-pronged encirclement tactic. 1. The vanguard strike, the anvil. Fitorari Habte. Georgis launched a direct frontal assault on General Albertone's lead brigade. This pinned the Italians in place, preventing them from deploying their superior artillery effectively. 2. The flanking maneuver. Ras Makonnen and Ras Mengesha led their forces around the hills to strike the Italian flanks. The Italians, confused by the jagged terrain and inaccurate maps, found themselves fired upon from heights they thought were unoccupied. 3. The reserve hammer. Emperor Menelik II held a massive reserve of 25,000 elite troops, including the Imperial Guard. He waited until the Italians were exhausted and disorganized before unleashing this hammer to shatter the center of the Italian line. By noon, the Italian lines collapsed. General Dabormida's brigade was isolated and destroyed in the Mariam Shavitu Valley. The civilized army was in a frantic, disorganized retreat. The statistics were staggering: 7,000 Italians dead, 1,500 wounded, and 3,000 taken prisoner. Ethiopia had secured its sovereignty through sheer tactical brilliance and national unity. The news hit Europe like a lightning bolt. It was the first time in the modern era that an African nation had decisively defeated a European power in a full-scale war. Italy was forced to sign the Treaty of Addis Ababa, recognizing Ethiopia's absolute independence. But Adwa was more than an Ethiopian victory. It was a Pan-African one. It became the star of hope for Black people worldwide. When many African nations gained independence decades later, they chose the green, yellow, and red of the Ethiopian flag to honor this victory. Today, Adwa remains a symbol of what is possible when a people unite against all odds. It proved that skin color is not a measure of military or intellectual capacity. Every year on March 2nd, the streets of Ethiopia fill with white traditional clothes, songs of heroes, and the proud memory of the day the Shield of Africa held firm. Ethiopia didn't just win a battle at Adwa. They won the right to exist on their own terms.